Welcome to the STARS program, seniors taking active roles in society. And now, here's your host, Anita Finley.
So this is an attorney show, and I always have to tell you, you never want an attorney until you need one. And when you need one, you want to get people who really know what they're doing. So we're very fortunate to have Gabe Zambrano, who's a trial attorney in Fort Lauderdale with the partnership of Farmer, Jaffe, Weissing, Edwards, Fistos, and Lehrman. So welcome to our show, Gabriel.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Do people call you Gabriel or Gabe?
You can call me Gabe.
You can call me Gabe. It sounds like a song. Well, it's interesting. All of us have learned about trial attorneys from television. Is it really that way?
I think it depends what generation you are. A lot of people grew up watching that L.A. show, which is in the 90s, and I think it depends if you watch that or you watch the more contemporary things with NYPD. I don't recall they solve a case or they have a case happen from beginning to end within half an hour or an hour, and that's just not reality.
Well, of course, a lot of things on television aren't reality, but I have to say, people. My son is an attorney. He's not a trial attorney. He's different. But what I really will tell you though is that attorneys have to study very hard in law school in order to pass. And they are up long hours to do this. And now I know why. Because when you have a case, this isn't easy, is it? No.
And it's great training to work hard, not just law school, but college, and then law school prepares you for the rigors of the profession.
And you had a lot of choices when you went to law school, I'm sure. Why did you choose to be a trial attorney?
I'm a first-generation immigrant, and so the law was a foreign thing to me and my parents. I remember my mother getting pulled over once and getting a ticket, and she didn't do anything wrong, and her English was not good enough to explain what happened, and my father found a lawyer who fought the ticket and won the ticket for her. And that same lawyer ended up fighting on behalf of my dad and setting precedent in the state of Florida on the issue of professional defamation. And so I had an early introduction and also saw how you could get trampled if you didn't know the law or know a lawyer. And in an indirect way, it inspired me because I always wanted to be either a doctor or a lawyer.
That is really special. So that's a good story. Usually I ask a lot of people that, and authors and all, interesting stories. All right, well, let's go into this. So here in South Florida, what is the most prevalent kind of lawsuit for an older adult in injury, personal injury? Is it automobiles?
No, and actually that's a great question. My focus in South Florida has been, and it has to do with the elderly or baby boomers, the use of drugs or medical devices that have either failed or are somehow defective. And right now we're investigating joint infections, and we have a website called jointinfectionlawsuits.com, which explains our investigation of something called forced air warming. There's a device that's been very popular for almost 3 decades called the bear hugger. And forced air warming is literally, if you envision a vacuum cleaner or a blow dryer that blows hot air, this device is used to keep people warm during joint replacement surgery. So baby boomers that are getting joint replacement in terms of knees or hips often have these warming devices on them. They don't know because they're under anesthesia. And what's happened in the last 5 years is the actual inventor of the device has come out and said, I believe it could cause or contribute to infections, which are called deep joint infections or periprosthetic infections, which then compromise the very surgery these people underwent. And as early as April of 2009, the inventor, a doctor named Augustine, told the manufacturer this, and they sort of put him aside. And December of 2010, the New York Times reported exactly on his story, and the manufacturer's position is, look, he's invented something new that he claims is better, so obviously he wants to undermine this prior product, and he has a contentious history with the manufacturer, but there's been scientific studies in Europe that show that this is possible, that it is possible that these forced air warming devices are disrupting the air in an operating room or operating theater that I can explain some more to you if you want to hear about it.
I'd like you to. Have you ever been in an operating room when this is happening?
Not for a joint replacement. I've been in operating rooms. I've seen them. Ironically, my dad is a retired general surgeon. So, yeah.
Oh, so this is ironic, isn't it? So you know all the things that can go wrong
Yes.
in surgery, but especially now we are hearing so much about the joint replacements. And I mean, it's a wonderful thing to have a joint replacement if it's done properly.
Right, and people want and need their mobility. You know, you have these active life communities, 55 and over. People are living longer, but devices. We've had devices fail in the recent past, which you're familiar with. In 2010, they recalled some DePuy hips, and in 2012 there were some other hips recalled. Devices fail, but this is a different issue. This is an issue where the forced air warming, hot air rises. And hot air has to escape this blanket that's on the patient. And the operating theater is full of cold air that's blowing to keep everybody cold by design, because the surgeons are wearing almost the equivalent of a hazmat suit to conduct the deep joint replacement surgery. When the hot air and the cold air mix, there's been an illustration and a study that there's almost a tornado-like vortex around the patient, because you now have hand movement, cold air and hot air meeting around a dead spot of air, which is under the bright lights that everyone associates with a surgery, and that is enough to potentially deposit something that compromises the surgery.
This is amazing. I've never heard of this before. I am so glad you are on the show. And so let me just tell everybody again, my guest is Gabriel Zambrano, trial attorney with Farmer, Jaffe, Weissing, and the other gentleman. And what we want you to do is to make a note of this, and I'm going to give you a website. If you're interested in making that call, it would be pathtojustice.com.
Right.
Is that's correct? So people can get on there, and then they can see what you do and contact you.
Absolutely.
Now, how would they know if this was the cause? I mean, well, let me just back up. My husband's had new knees, new hips, new knees for 25 years. Nothing has happened. He's had a very good situation. However, there are many people you see limping, wasn't good, and a lot of them are looking to get help. And so is that the kind of person that you would like to call you?
That's a great question. The potential victim, the unknowing victim, will have developed MRSA or a staph infection within a year or less of the surgery. And really, the onset is very quick because people realize the joint's been compromised and there's an infection in an even shorter period of time. Then they have to undergo extensive antibiotic therapy, which includes having drip IVs or a port, a PICC line inserted, which has the IV drip the antibiotic into them to try and get rid of this infection. If that works or doesn't, sometimes it doesn't work. And when it doesn't work, they take out part of the joint. They put in an antibiotic spacer to try and save the joint. If it's completely compromised, they have to go in and do what's called a revision surgery and completely replace this joint, which is another surgery. And unfortunately, some people have suffered significant complications resulting in amputation or even death.
There really are a lot of revisions going on, and I know that because I know some of the orthopedic surgeons that are the ones doing the revisions, and they're very upset because what was done to that patient was not right. And so this is a very mixed bag of knowing, who's good, who's not good, what's happening. And just to jump ahead a minute, when I'm watching television, it is amazing. It used to be car ads. Now we have pharmaceutical ads. And if you do this, this is going to happen, that could happen, this could happen. I mean, this is, I don't even want to take any prescription medication.
I'm glad you brought that up. That's a interesting phenomenon in the United States. We're one of the few countries that allows direct-to-consumer marketing through the television. And if you remember, and I remember, I'm old enough to remember, how tobacco would blanket the airwaves, TV, radio, print. You'd have pictures of doctors. You'd hear about it on the radio. On college campuses, they were pushing those T-shirts with Joe Cool, the camel. There was an end finally put to that, but the pharmaceutical companies are allowed, if they fairly balance the ad between safety and efficacy, their effectiveness, their messaging, to run these ads and get directly to consumers, which is why you see that all day long. And
so I know I want to talk about knees and hips and things like that, but I have to assume that there must be some cases that you're handling with medication that has done terrible things.
Yes. One something that affects the population we're talking about in the demographic of your listeners is the new novel anticoagulants. In the last few years, the FDA approved some new anticoagulants or blood thinners to replace WARFARIN or COUMADIN, which were the staple of anticoagulative therapy for the last 60, 70 years. And they approved something called PRADAXA, dabigatran, etexylate, which was then followed by something called XARELTO, rivaroxaban, and now what's coming is Eliquis. We handled PRADAXA's death cases. There were friends. We had a friend whose mother died on PRADAXA. These people literally bleed to death because there is no known antidote for this novel anticoagulant. It's a new and allegedly improved anticoagulant, but the problem is, and it's not sufficiently emphasized to the patient and through the physician to some extent, that there is no antidote. If something happens and you're on this, they can't reverse it fast enough. If you have a compromised kidney or some other issue where you can't get help fast enough, you could literally bleed to death.
I mean, you really sound like a doctor on the show. It's amazing what you have. You've had to learn this, haven't you? In order to win a case, you really have to know every little bit of what it is. So, is your dad still living?
Yes.
He must be very proud of you.
I would hope so. Thank you. But you have to, that's a great point. These cases are not cases that everybody handles. Just like it's not your run-of-the-mill personal injury case. It takes a level of knowledge of reading up and following the research because it all builds on prior research to understand how these medical devices and drugs go bad and harm people and the FDA's role or failure.
Well, we hope a lot of people are listening. And, of course, this is international radio. I mean, it goes everywhere on the Internet. And so we hope no matter where you are, you're going to fly into South Florida and talk with Gabe Zambrano, who is with the firm Farmer, Jaffe, Weissing, I'll just say Edwards, Vistos, and Lehrman. And they are located in Fort Lauderdale. And they specialize in this. And, of course, if you're in pain or you're really having a problem, you need to have a real expert there to help you. What happens if someone calls you and they don't live in this area? Will you take care of it?
That's a wonderful question. We actually handle cases nationwide. These are drug and device cases we call mass torts, but we handle class actions and personal injury cases nationwide, as well as handle cases involving sex abuse nationwide. So we're willing to talk to anybody in the United States or the United States territories to see if we can help them. And if we can't specifically help them through relationships our firm has nationally, we can find them a competent or qualified lawyer within a discrete discipline or field of expertise.
And one thing I think we should, I think I have it right, that if someone comes to you, are they charged or they're not charged until you win the case? Or how does that work? That's
another great question.
Good, and we haven't even met before.
Yeah, this wasn't rehearsed. What we do is we handle these cases on a contingency fee basis, which means no recovery, no fee. We front the costs of investigating the case. We undertake the risk, so we're paid a fixed percentage, which you know up front, if we succeed in either a trial or a settlement, which resolves the case.
And I'm sure then the consultation is very important, so you find out really what's going on, and as long as people are honest and you work on that first before you even take the case.
Yes, and the consultations we offer free consultations nationwide telephonically. Cases that need or justify having to meet with people in another state will do as well.
Do you see an increase now in the cases to do with what you've been talking about?
I don't know that it's so much of an increase as to a growing awareness, where my awareness has grown after 20 plus years of practicing law and realizing that beyond being able to help or needing to help people with traditional personal injury cases, there are other areas of law where you can help more people at the same time with regard to harm they've suffered.
I'm glad you're on the show because I have to tell you one thing that especially the older adults. I don't think the baby boomers are going to feel the same way, but, they always go in loving their doctor, and they never want to do anything to hurt the doctor, parentheses, God. I'm sorry to say that. But, as a gerontologist, I do understand this, and it's wonderful to have loyalty to your doctor. But there are second opinions, and they're very good to get second opinions. And I'm sure you get a lot of second opinions in your field of law. But if anyone has had any of these problems or any problems to do with hips, knees, shoulders, or, anything where you have been injured, you really need to find the very best person to help you, the very best company, the very best law firm, because this could prevent you from living to be 100 plus, which my book says. And, it's not casual. When you get hurt, you need to take care of it. And some of these expenses are enormous, and you need to have those funds to do it. And you would get that from the remuneration of a lawsuit.
Potentially, yeah. And let me address something you just touched on. Because of that physician-patient relationship, some people do have reservations about questioning their doctor or their doctor's decision. These cases, the pharmaceutical and medical device cases, are typically not against the doctor. That's medical malpractice. These cases are against the manufacturer, the pharmaceutical company, who either hid or failed to disclose data that was damaging to a product it wanted to promote or get approved by the FDA, or who was in a position to warn about known risks and for a variety of reasons either didn't detect it or deliberately chose not to disclose it. Sort of what we're hearing right now with Volkswagen.
I was going to say that, and I didn't know what I was about to say, but that's a very good example.
So folks don't have to worry about how this is going to alter their relationship with the doctor, because typically the doctor may not have known, and the pharmaceutical company is charged with communicating to the doctor known risks and side effects, but they're in the best position when they're testing something, and then if they don't tell the doctor's not in a position to inform the patient.
So how does it feel when you win for someone? It must be very exciting, because you're probably talking about sometimes, 6 months, a year? Is it a long endured trial?
It's longer than the TV episodes we started talking out about. It definitely can take a long time. I have some clients that I started with in 2009 that are still waiting to get paid with regard to certain drug, and that has to do with the negotiation, the length of the litigation, and the nature of their injury. It's a great feeling to be able to hand somebody fulfill the promise that you started the relationship with. I did that this week. I visited a lady up here in Boca at a rehab facility who I'd been talking to for months. Her case had been resolved, and she was going through tremendous financial difficulty. And I kept telling her, light at the end of the tunnel is there. You just need to keep putting one foot in front of the other, and you're going to get there. And I literally got to go do that this week for her. So it's a great,
wonderful thing.
Heartwarming feeling.
Yeah, it must have been very much so. Well, the other thing I was thinking, though, is when someone has this problem, they're in a lot of pain. So you're dealing with someone, if they're in a rehab or somewhere else. It's not casual. This isn't like somebody, had a car accident and they just go home. So you have to must have a very heartwarming, caring personality.
I'd like to think so. I take the time, to listen to the client, which is very important, so that you understand what they're really going through and can appreciate. You don't really walk in their shoes, but at least can know where they're coming from, because that's important in communicating or expressing their loss to the other side.
Well, the fact that it takes long, is it possible someone could pass away, and you would still handle the case? And then where would that money go? To the estate?
Yes, from time to time that happens, and what happens is an estate designates something called a personal representative, and that person would take over the potential case or claim for them, depending on the timing.
Yeah, well, are we finding most people in this situation are over the age of 65? Although, nowadays there are many young athletes in their 40s and 50s who are probably having the same problems. And that when you think about the drugs, a lot of young people are taking these drugs.
Sure. There's people from all walks of life and ages that are impacted by defective drugs or medical devices. a few years back, and what I started out doing in terms of drug cases was a oral contraceptive that was really targeting a younger demographic, but it spanned all the way up to past reproductive age because they claimed it had other benefits. And so with the anticoagulants, anybody can have AFib, atrial fibrillation, which is an irregular heartbeat, which allows blood to pool in the upper chambers of the heart and potentially cause a blood clot. And that can happen at any age. So it's more prevalent in an older population, but I think it's several million. I want to say it's 7 million or 4 million people that potentially have AFib. So it's a broad spectrum of people. And as you noted, people getting hip implants or knee implants ranged in age from somebody in their early 50s to I have clients that were in their 70s or even 80s that were getting implants.
Oh, well, actually, I've had orthopedic surgeons with bragging about a lot of their patients who are in good health are in their 90s.
Yeah, that's...
Because if we're in good health, we want to walk. We don't want to be in a wheelchair.
And people are definitely living longer.
Yeah, and so it looks like you're going to have a lot of cases. I mean, I don't want people to be hurt, but it's just the way it is. But people do have to know they can do something about it. I think that's probably the biggest challenge for you, that people who are listening now probably say, oh, I don't know if I want to do it. It's a big, long deal. And they shouldn't they?
They should find out what their rights are. Legal services like this are not out of reach, and that's what the contingency fee-based arrangement allows. Lawyers are willing to undertake the risk on behalf of victims or consumers that have been victimized, and people have the ability to empower themselves. It's not something that's out of reach. Traditional legal services were out of reach for a lot of people because it was an hourly rate and an astronomical rate depending on the specialty or availability of lawyers.
So you've been listening to Gabriel, we'll call him Gabe Zambrano. He's a trial attorney with the law firm of Farmer, Jaffe, Weissing, Edwards, Vistos, and Lehrman. They're located in Fort Lauderdale, and you can actually go on their website, which is pathtojustice.com. And I have to just say that's a great website, Path to Justice, because that's how you see this, don't you?
That's how our firm and all the lawyers view it. That's what we're helping people do, is pursue their legal remedies and their path to justice.
And so you said, if I'm not mistaken, you've been doing this for 20 years?
Yes.
You're pretty young. You must have gotten right out of law school and started this.
I went straight from college to law school. Yeah.
And then law school to this particular field?
Law school, and I was litigating all types of different personal injury cases. And then I transitioned into pharmaceutical and medical device cases in late 2008.
So do the pharmaceutical companies like you? I mean, some of them are very reputable, and I'm sure that they try not to have any of these things happen to them, correct?
I think for the most part, pharmaceutical companies try and provide a beneficial product to society, but there are products that we don't need and that are developed because they can be developed, and it's a way to make a blockbuster bottom line gain. And that's what one of the central themes in a lot of these cases is, this is a product nobody needed, or it's not really an improvement. It's a something that they've created.
Yeah, I understand that. But, the other thing that I find very interesting about this is that, and I don't know, I haven't asked you, do you have any women in your firm?
Yes, we do, actually. We have a new lawyer that just passed the bar this week that is a young lawyer in our firm.
Ah, okay. Because I always think of, it's strange, of course I've seen it on television, but I always think of men in the trial as a trial attorney, not women. Am I wrong?
Yes. There's plenty of women trial lawyers locally and throughout the country in very prominent roles.
Because I think you have to be a tiger, don't you, to really, when things, this is a tough business, trial attorneys, because they're at big stakes. This isn't a little divorce.
Well, divorces
okay,
can,
well, you're down here, maybe
can also be very contentious. You have to be a paper tiger, I think, more than not just a the idea of a tiger, and there's a balance too where you have to balance the aggressive representation with some semblance of reasonableness, because the parties at some point have to move on, whether it's by a agreement, some type of mediated settlement or agreed upon settlement, or trial if you can't resolve your differences.
So now, and I've never been on, I've actually never been on a jury. Isn't that funny? I've lived here all my life. I've never been asked yet to be on a jury. I have no idea why. But when you're picking the jury for something like this, is there a different way to choose a person than in some other kind of a case?
I haven't had to actually pick a jury in a pharmaceutical case, but you try and get 6 people that are willing to do what they're required to do, which is keep an open mind until the end of the case and hear out all the evidence and give each side a chance.
But one of the questions probably is, have you ever had any problem with any medication or
you certainly, but that can also sometimes cut both ways, because you get a lot of people that raise their hands that will tell you a medication saved their life or someone else's life, and then some people that will tell you the opposite. And then at the end of the day, they need to be able to keep an open mind to help evaluate both sides' presentation of their evidence in the case.
Yeah, I guess because this is such a this just happened yesterday, though, with the president of that pharmaceutical company that's charging this enormous amount of money, and he said, "I'm not going to reduce it," and now he's reducing it.
I saw that.
He was so adamant. I mean, you imagine if you really needed that drug and it's really that good? That's just not very good.
It's not the first time that's happened. And a few years back, there was a type of drug used, I think it was for pregnant women or during pregnancy. And I wasn't surprised to hear the story, but I was relieved that by this morning they'd backed off. But they're also to some extent hedging their bet, saying they're going to make it an affordable drug, but not really telling anybody what the price is.
Yeah. I knew that you were coming on, and so I've been getting all these questions together to get everything I can to think about it. So when you go to a party, it's like a gynecologist goes to a party, and all the women wanted to have a discussion with him about something. And if they know you're a trial attorney, do they all get over to you? Listen, I had this problem. What do you think about it?
I think it's got it's a two-sided effect where some people want to ask you questions and some people want nothing to do with you because they don't they don't understand. I think the way I've explained it to people is you don't understand until you need a lawyer why you need a lawyer. People that go see a lawyer typically have gotten to a point where they can't handle a problem themselves. It's the same situation when you end up at a doctor. You couldn't figure it out yourself, or your accountant. You can't do your own taxes. A lot of people aren't there because they want to be there. It's because they have a problem they can't solve themselves.
Well, it's been great having you on our show. I gather, have you done this before?
I haven't, but thank you for having me.
I'm so happy to have you. Maybe we'll have you again. I'll have a lot more questions for you the next time.
I'd love to do that.
Thank you very much. And that's pathtojustice.com, and that's Gabe Zambrano. Thank you.
Thank you.